The creative act is a letting down of the net of human imagination into the ocean of chaos on which we are suspended, and the attempt to bring out of it ideas. It is the night sea journey, the lone fisherman on a tropical sea with his nets, and you let these nets down. Sometimes something tears through them that leaves them in shreds, and you just row for shore and put your head under your bed and pray. At other times, what slips through are the minutiae, the minnows of this ichthyological metaphor of idea chasing. But sometimes you can actually bring home something that is food, food for the human community that we can sustain ourselves on and go forward. Terence McKenna. Welcome to the Lost Traveler podcast. I'm your host, Henry Cameron Allen, and I'm very honored today to welcome Julia Niemann, who is an international best-selling author of multiple books and anthologies, youth entrepreneurship coach, and much, much more. Your history is so varied and yet so specific. And we are colleagues as well, both serving on the board of directors of the Global Presence, Parenting 2.0's educational nonprofit. Welcome.
Hi, Henry. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm so excited to get to work with you on a regular basis and commiserate about things that we feel are so important in this life skills work that we're doing.
I know. I find it amazing that we're connected to such a big global project. And I find that so satisfying.
Well, it's a network, and it's really, I grew up all over the world, and I've never felt like I'm the citizen of one particular place. And so at this stage of my life, in my mid-50s, to be able to connect with people on a global scale, talking about things that are so important for our time, of all time. I mean, it's really, so important for all time. But right now, there are skills that we are lacking universally, and we need to be talking about them.
We do. I agree. And this is a time, there's a light shining on all of this now. So this is a time to grab hold and really start emphasizing some of this stuff.
Well, and that's why I decided to start a podcast about it, about really bringing in people who are experts in their field, talking about what skills we need to develop now to meet this time, but also to meet an uncertain future. And, this isn't just for those of us that are in the autumn of our of our lives or beyond, but it's really focusing on all ages. I just read a quote today, in fact, by Ella Fitzgerald, one of my biggest inspirations as a jazz singer. She said, "The diehards, they're just going to die hard. They're not going to give in. You've got to try and convince the younger ones. They're the ones who've got to make the future. And those are the ones we've got to worry about, not those diehards." And I thought of you.
How appropriate is that comment for what's going on today?
Right?
Right. It's
right.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about the work that you've done with youth in terms of mentorship and guiding young people toward entrepreneurship and really monetizing their passions. It sounds like, from the books that you've written and the multiple interviews that I found on YouTube, and any one of our listeners can go to YouTube and just pull up Julia Niemann and you'll see a bunch of videos. Talk a little bit about that work. What inspired you? Where was the spark lit in you?
Well, I was a clinical social worker for years, working with teenagers in the foster care system. And
Right.
my kids were I worked in the transitional housing program where we actually had to teach them life skills that they were going to need because they were getting ready to age out of the system and they were going to be on their own. And one day, so I'd been doing this for years, and one day I'm sitting there and one of my clients walks in. I go, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at work." "I quit my job." It's like, "What do you mean you quit your job? You just started yesterday." And he said, "I don't like the way they talk to me."
Hmm.
And I realized at that moment, that was like a pivotal moment in my life, because I realized if I could not do something for this kid, he was going to be on the system, meaning, collecting welfare and getting services from the county for the whole rest of his life. If
Right.
he didn't do something right now, he wasn't going to make it. And his psychiatrist said his prognosis was either jail or dead within the year. So, yeah, because he was on all kinds of drugs. I mean, this kid had had a very traumatic life. People that he should have been able to trust tortured him, basically. He just had a horrible childhood, and it left him marked in very deep ways. And so he turned to drugs. He was taking drugs. He was on psychotropic medications, and the kid was a mess. So I didn't know what I was doing. This was all like, this all came rushing into my life at that moment. And I sat him down and I said, what is it that you want for your life? Do you have any idea of what it is you might like to do? And he said, "Yeah, I want to be a professional skateboarder." Well, between all the drugs and the fact that he was 300 pounds and very uncoordinated, I wasn't seeing that bringing him any income anytime soon. But rather than quash his dream, I said to him, "Well, is there any skills that you have that you could use to make money with while you're honing your skateboarding skills?" And he responded to that instantly. And he said, "I can draw." I go, "I didn't know that. You never told me you could draw." He said, "Yeah, I'll show you." He went and brought some of his drawings in. Henry, if this kid could have held a job, he could have been an animator for Disney. He was that talented.
Wow.
I had never seen his work before. So like we're talking like 2 hours after he quit his job, we're having this conversation. And I said to him, "Okay, that's a good idea. Well, what could you do with this drawing? What is there in the world of skateboarding that the art would relate to?" And he said, "How about customizing skateboards? Doing like custom drawings for individual skateboards." I said, "Okay, that's a great idea. So why don't you do some drawings and I'll try to figure out what we can do with them." And he came back the next morning. So this is like, I don't know what, maybe 12 hours later, he comes back with 12 new drawings. He was up all night working on them. He was so excited about this. I said, "What did I get myself into? I have no idea what to do with this. I never expected this to happen so quickly." And we called the skateboard manufacturer, the guy that made the skateboard. I called him. I explained the situation to him, and he said, "Well, I have an in-house artist, but because the kid is a foster kid, send me the pictures. I'll have a look at them, and maybe I can give you some feedback." So we faxed over these 12 pictures. The guy calls back the next day. This is like less than 48 hours. He calls back. He goes, "I'm going to buy 4 of these. These are fabulous."
Oh. Well, see,
Within 48 hours, this kid was in business and making
amazing.
money.
And that's a great example of what we're going to be talking about today. The other side of chaos, right? This
Yes.
kid had a chaotic foundation. And
that's right.
You were the universe conspired for the two of you to meet in that moment, and you were able to usher him across the threshold.
And we're going to take a brief pause right now to hear a word from our sponsor.
It's like chaos is like a wall, right? Or like its own dimension, and things go on in there, and it's crazy, and you don't know what's coming next, and some of it's good and some of it's bad, and it's like this big whirlwind, and then suddenly you're on the other side of it, and life is totally different.
Right. Well, how do you think that works there's the individual chaos that we go through in our own experience, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
You look at America right now, specifically, and going through her own chaos, and you look at every other country individually, but then you look at us collectively, globally, and I guess from where I sit, I don't know that the world has never not been in chaos as far as we know. Um, there's a certain natural state of chaos out of which
Yeah.
we evolve.
Yep. No, that's really true. There's a theory in business. I learned this in graduate school. So, and it's called the chaos theory. And big corporations experience this a lot where they're going along and things are just great. And then suddenly they're thrown into this chaotic situation, whether it's the market failing or some new technology is replacing what they have. And there's all this craziness in their company and they don't know if they're going to survive or not. And then that's when they have to get really creative and come up with something new to help them survive and get through this. And then they expand. They come out on the other side of this chaos with a whole new program or a new product or something that carries them forward to the next chaotic experience.
Absolutely. So what,
that's why you look at these companies and they keep coming up with different products or, even in the fast food industry, they take off, there's these trends. And unless a company can adapt to the trends, they don't make it.
So how do we adapt? Individually, nationally, internationally, to what's going on right now? That's the burning question because it's changing almost daily.
So let's focus on what's going on right now. So, a lot of people are complaining about the administration in the United States and there's no leadership and there's no, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm not a supporter of this president. And he has brought tremendous chaos to the country. But we have needed this, not only the country, but the entire world needed him to be right where he is, doing what he's doing, because he is shining a light on all of the darkness that we've been covering up for so long, whether it's racism or corporate greed or whatever it is, greed in politics. Everything we can see now is not serving us, ordinary people. It's serving those people who are running the systems. And so we are starting to wake up. And I think that that's what's required. Somebody has to actually show you what it is that's going on in a way that you can see it and relate to it. Because most people, we've come up, you and I have talked about this before, in the industrial age in America, how school was invented to create not good citizens, but people who would be good workers in the factories. And then now it's moved from the factories to the cubicles, right? And the school system is the same. It's training you to be a good employee. They train you to respect authority, and it's not real respect. They don't respect you back. So people are being trained from childhood to think a certain way and to behave a certain way. And I think what I love about the millennial generation, especially the younger ones, they're not putting up with that BS.
That's right.
Like, I don't think so, and I'd rather not go to school if that's what you're going to try to do to me. And I love this.
Right.
I love this. Is where the real revolution is coming from these days.
And where the resolution is going to come from.
Exactly.
Right. I think that right now we're experiencing a something that we've seen before in human history. This is not new. This is practically every generation, right? And those of us who are children of the 50s and 60s, we saw it happen then, and I agree, the current administration is not the cause of these problems.
That's right.
But because of what he has brought to the table, it's exposing in a way that we really needed. Now, I also didn't vote for him, and I know a lot of people. I have friends and family who did vote for him and have no issue whatsoever.
That's right.
They think everything's hunky dory, and we need to get him back. Well, that's the great divide. That's the continental divide right now, and that's not going to be an easy thing to remedy at this point.
It is. It's kind of like we really do live in the Matrix, that movie, The Matrix. I hope everybody's seen it, because especially the first one, it was so real when you look at what's going on. People have been programmed from childhood to think a certain way, and we all have these tape loops running through our brain, and that's part of the chaos, is like kind of thrown some of these loops off the track for people, which is a really good thing. But there's other people who are still so plugged in, and they're not letting go. They're just simple, single-minded, like staying right on track with that. They're not letting go. And that's so divisive, and like separates us and makes us fight with each other. We got to get past this. We got to get past this two-party system. Our whole political, and I think in most countries, not just in the United States, but the whole political system everywhere needs to be changed. There are not too many places in the world that really are supportive of their citizens anymore.
Yeah, I've been really struggling lately with the whole concept of nationalism, which I know is a very taboo thing to say, and I hope I don't lose listeners over it. But I really feel like we are at a point in human development that that we are starting to see how connected we actually are. The veil is being lifted, and we're able to look into each other's eyes and say, oh, we're more alike than we're not. And let's celebrate the differences. Let's embrace those differences. Let's learn from one another and share this tiny planet in a way that's going to be healthy. I can idealize as much as the next guy, but in terms of practicality and actual things that we can do today, this conversation is part of it. I think we need to start talking to one another in open and honest and respectful ways. There's a lot of flaming on social media, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of middle school name calling, play yard behavior. What do you think about that? I mean, I know that, we talked about school and the home and those things, those tapes that keep playing. Religion certainly plays a part in that. Economic status plays a lot in that. How do we transcend it at this time? Do we have the capacity at large, all of us?
Well, I think that we do. And I think that we are in the middle of this kind of change right now. And all of this nonsense online and this ugliness is all part of people, if they're really honest with themselves, they're asking, if I let this go and I'm open to change, who do I become? And they're frightened of that. They can't answer that. So this fear comes up, and fear makes people behave the way they do.
And we'll be right back right after this. Feel well, live well. Vox Life combines neuromuscular science with decades of proven research to help you achieve your wellness goals. Safe for all ages, drug-free, and with no invasive treatments, Vox Life products use the patented Vox HPT, a special tactile pattern that activates your body's neuroreceptors to reduce aches and pains, keeping you at maximum performance every day. Visit DianeDinkmeyer.voxlife.com for details. That's Vox Life, VOXX Life.
That's the greatest motivator in life. It's like, I'm not letting go. I'm sticking with this guy because he speaks to everything that I've been programmed for. And I'm sticking with him because if I don't have this, who am I going to be? What do I have to do? What's going to happen to me? Are they going to come after me? Is my worst fear going to be realized? that's what's motivating them, to stay stuck where they are. But I think that a lot of other people, I've seen this just in the community where I live even, this has brought out the best in people. It's like everybody here, whether they know you or not, is like, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do for you? And if you're an older citizen, it's like, I'm going down the mountain shopping. What can I get for you? What can I bring back so you don't have to go be exposed to this virus?
And I don't know about you,
You
but
know,
I see a whole lot more of that in the world than I see the other stuff.
totally, totally. But it's the other stuff that gets the press.
That's right.
Right? The other stuff, all the ugliness is what gets attention from the corporate media, who that's what they want you to focus on.
Which is privately owned.
They want it. That's right. It's owned by corporate, like in the United States, 6 corporations own every single bit of media.
Right.
Except now we're getting a lot of alternative media. So you can go to YouTube and get alternative media that's not right or left. They're progressive in a way that doesn't identify with Democrats or Republicans, because they're neither. And they come down heavy on both sides. So this whole political system needs to change. The whole world needs to change. But I see people rising up and like, what can I do? What can I offer to the world? I want to be part of something bigger than me. And I don't want to be involved in this nonsense anymore, because there's no peace and love and satisfaction in it. So the world is awakening, I think, and we're kind of in the middle of an ascension.
Mm.
And when this is over in the next few years, you're going to have a lot of people who are more open, who are becoming world citizens, because we are. You know, it's so funny. You and I were having this conversation about DNA,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about racism in particular.
Right.
And this is just so ironic to me. I had said to you that racism is in the DNA of America and pretty much the whole world, but particularly America. And in actual DNA testing, when they do these tests on you to identify who your ancestors are, almost every single person that has had their DNA tested has DNA that goes back to Africa or the Middle East.
Yeah. Oh, I know the tribes in Africa, in East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania, that my origins sprung from, and that information is there. And this is, you know, to me, fear. See what you think about this. Fear is really born out of ignorance. It's not its own thing. You know, it doesn't just exist for its own sake. Fear is born out of ignorance. And the more we strive to understand and learn not only American history, but human history. I have listeners all over the world now in a dozen countries, right? We all have stories within us. The science of epigenetics I've talked about before is we're finding genetic markers in our blood that are memories tied to our ancestors. You know, when I think deja vu, or, you know, I'm right now here in a remote village in southwestern Spain, and I found recently that I actually have ancient ancestry from this part of Spain. No wonder I feel so at home here and feel connected to the people, you know, and the culture. You know, I think there's got to be a certain degree of building one's awareness and going within to discover the world within, so we can meet the world without.
I totally agree with that, Henry. That's really what our mission on this planet should be, is going deep inside and connecting with who we really are, where we come from, who our ancestors were, and then reconnecting with that. And then when you do that, then you have the capability to rise above whatever your fears are. And to me, fear becomes a real thing. Yes, it's born of ignorance, and it's what holds us back, but it becomes a real thing, and people almost become possessed by it. It becomes power in their life that holds them back.
It's a disability.
It is a disability.
I never thought
It's
that
a
thought
serious.
before, but
It is. They become possessed by it, and that's what rules their emotions and their every thought.
yeah.
And you hear people say all the time, "Oh, change your thoughts, change your life." Well, I can tell you that that's really true.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced that in my own life many, many times. And now I've become really positive, and I look for those negative thoughts. If one creeps in, I go, "Hey, you're not mine. Get out."
How are you
I
serving me?
intentionally get out.
How are you serving me is what I ask when those questions come up in me. And if the
Yeah.
answer comes back, well, I'm not, I'm just an old tape. Well, guess what you can do with an old tape? You can chuck it
Yeah.
in the bin, you know. You don't have to
Chuck it in the bin, that's right, or record over it.
record it.
And the thing about the human brain, when you think of pictures of the brain, it has all these grooves
Yeah.
in it. Well, that's where your habits and your thoughts get like written into these grooves. So if you change your thoughts and every day focus on a new positive thought, that will override the negative thought and become engraved in your brain in a physical way. Isn't that
It's
amazing?
amazing. And we knew this in the 70s. Remember Zig Ziglar?
Yep.
The power of positive thinking. And who was that other guy, love guy, who was talking about love all the time? I don't remember his name.
I don't know what you mean.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
Oh,
You have any more?
I'll have to look it up. He was all about love, and he was such a beautiful soul. But I remember my mom especially. She bought the tapes. She bought the self-improvement,
Oh,
power
awesome.
of positive thinking every day in every way. I'm getting better and better, right? All that stuff.
Awesome.
And what's interesting is that a lot of people who are children of the 40s and 50s and had kids in the 60s are now in their 60s and 70s. And many of them are turning to life coaching. Isn't
Yeah.
that interesting? That's kind of a full circle moment.
Yeah. Well, life goes in cycles.
Yeah.
It's just that each cycle is the same, but it's different. Because when you mentioned before about the 60s, look at all the revolution that took place in the 60s. We were revolting constantly. We were on the street with our signs, picketing the war, wanting peace. And here we are now. It's just a different topic, but we're doing the same thing. It's the same energy. And it's all about energy, and people don't realize that.
So
that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing about your thoughts. Your thoughts are energy. So you can change your life by changing your energy.
And that's never changed throughout history.
That's right.
That's inherent to our humanity. Is there something that you think is different, having been through the 60s and marching, and all that, bra burning and civil rights? Are there any differences besides, say, social media that you see today in the impulses that and the energies that are around the challenges right now?
Not really.
The chaos?
No, to me, it's very, very similar. Because what did we want then? We wanted freedom, we wanted peace, we wanted to just be left alone to love each other, and we didn't want to go to war, and we didn't want to fight, and that's what we were protesting at the time. And what are they protesting now? We want you to stop killing people. It's basically the same. The circumstances are a little different, but the energies of it are the same. We still want peace. We want to be left alone to live our lives. We want to have opportunity, which is, as kids, that's what we wanted back in the 60s. We wanted the opportunity to have a better life. We wanted the opportunity not to have to live our parents' life. And that was one of the things I learned with the foster youth. And they didn't like being told what to do. And when some of my clients became homeless, it was like, I'll get you in the shelter. I'm not going to a shelter. Well, why not? Because they tell you what to do, and they try to force this stuff down your throat. I'd rather be on the street. So really what that said to me was kids, people in general, I think, not only kids, but people in general be told how to live their life. They just want to be given the freedom to live their life in the best way that they see possible, and they want support for that.
Well,
and that is what's missing today, is like support for other people.
well, and there's also, I do think that social media does play into that lack of freedom a lot, because and it's not just young people. I see people my age, I see people my parents' age and older,
Mhm.
who are so connected to social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. Even when you Google something, then the ads start popping up, right? For the thing that you were looking for
Yeah,
3 months ago. Um,
yeah, that's right.
and
That's right.
and that's a sort of imprisonment at the same time, isn't it? Where it's tough to break through. There are some people who have the power to put it down and take a break for a week or two or a month, but it's getting
Yeah.
harder and harder to do that. And I think there is a degree of manipulation that's happening that I see.
A degree, Henry, I would say it's all out war.
Yeah.
And it's all about marketing and getting those dollars out of your pocket. That's what it's about. It's crazy. And, people, Edward Snowden, I don't know if you've heard his
Sure.
interviews lately,
Yeah.
his new book. This guy to me is a hero. And it really is propaganda that the government put out that he's a traitor, because he's not. He's serving us. He wants us to be aware of what the government is doing to us.
Yeah.
And he has been so crystal clear about it. But the thing about social media, and I try to work with my clients, especially my younger kids that I'm trying to help them start a business, you have to be aware of what goes on social media, and that they are out to get you. And don't push those buttons for the ads. Don't do that. They are listening to you. They are scanning and looking for certain words.
Harvesting.
And if you go on a site,
they're harvesting information about you.
Yes, harvesting information. That's exactly right. And it's the corporations that want all this knowledge about you, because they want to separate you from your money. And we have to be aware of that. And I find that people that are educated about that, I know I can use social media without getting sucked into any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't depend on social media. But on the other hand, social media is this great, like, schizophrenic thing, because it's a great way to stay in touch. I mean, look at you and I are talking on technology from different parts of the world, and it's not costing any extra money to do this. In the past, if you had to get on the phone and make a overseas phone call, the costs were exorbitant, and you couldn't talk more than 3 or 4 minutes at a time.
That's right.
So technology is this amazing, wonderful thing, and social media, to be able to Zoom or do Facebook videos and be able to connect to people all over the world, is an amazing thing. It's such a gift. But on the other hand, the dark side of it is that they are watching you. They are gleaning information from you to try to control your life and separate you from your money. So we have to educate kids from a very early age about the dark side of social media, which we don't.
We don't.
A lot of parents use it as a babysitter.
Oh, I had that happen in my theater one time. I had to have a meeting with one of the moms, and she had 2 kids. Well, she had 1 kid, and then there was another kid, and they were about 6 or 7 years old. And the mom gave her 7-year-old the phone to go and sit in a corner of the theater while we were having this conference. Well, it turns out one of the actors was coming down the stairs above where the kids were, and they were watching videos on YouTube of live, like, car accident victims. Like, horrific, the most horrific images that you can imagine. And
oh my God,
when we gently brought it to the attention of the mom, she said, "Oh yeah, he's really fascinated with anything medical, so I let him watch all those things." And we were just like, "Oh, honey."
Okay.
I worked for
Right.
many years in Waldorf schools, and one of the things that this particular school that I was in would address with parents from early childhood is the message to delay media influence as long as possible. It's really hard in the 21st century to eliminate it altogether. Even if you eliminate it in your home, you don't have a TV or an accessible,
Yeah.
computer or pad or whatever. They're going to go to a friend's house for an overnight, right? And that kid's going to have all the bells and whistles. So you can't really protect them fully from it. But if you have in your awareness to delay it as long as possible so that they learn critical thinking skills before they ever meet it, and then they can sort out what's real and what's not real and ask the right questions and know why it works the way it works, right?
Exactly right. And critical thinking skills, you asked this question earlier, that's one of the skills that we have not been developing. That's been intentionally put down by those people that are trying to create good workers.
So how do we fix that?
Well,
how do we guide
those of us that know about critical thinking have to teach it.
Right.
Have to teach it. And the thing about kids, is their brains are not fully developed until early to mid-20s, right? So that's why they do stupid things like speed at 100 miles per hour and go through stop signs and drink too much, because they don't have the capacity to really understand the consequences. That's just not part of their physiology at the moment. And so we have to be aware of that, and we have to constantly teach that to them, because their brain just doesn't work that way until they're 22, 23, 24.
But if we didn't get those skills though in our foundation, and we are seeing a lot of adults who are lacking those skills now, how do we go?
Because it wasn't. So those of us that teach life skills have to find a way to impart this knowledge to the parents, because and I like Marlene, who's the founder of the Global Presence. She calls it being unskilled. So the parents are unskilled. If they don't have the skill, like you just said, they can't pass it on to their kids. So that takes a third-party educator to help them develop those skills, including the parents. And I've had to do that with many of my clients. I would go on these home visits, right? And I had to work on the same things with the parents that I was having to work on with the kids. They're just unskilled, but we have to find a way to start teaching that at an early age. I mean, older people, if they don't have it by now, my generation, we were taught critical thinking. I remember that from school. We were taught that, and it made a huge difference. But from the 60s on, that started to go away.
Yeah.
And that was part of controlling people. Don't teach them the skills that they need to think for themselves. And that's how we controlled them. So people really need to look at that they're being controlled. People all over the world are being controlled by what they're being taught and what they're not being taught.
Your generous sponsorship and individual support of the Lost Traveler podcast benefits the Lost Travelers Club, a charitable project under the fiscal sponsorship of United Charitable, a nonprofit 501c3 organization. The Lost Travelers Club focuses primarily on the needs of parents who have outlived their beloved children. We recently launched our new Brain Candy Project wing, providing art supplies to children still struggling with critical or terminal health-related conditions. We hope to raise enough funds to launch Brain Candy, an arts and literature magazine created by and for these young people. Find out more at www.braincandy.online. Thank you. '21st century life skills warrant 21st century education. Every human being is born into a classroom, each of us given the same homework, the same core assignments. personal care skills, emotional literacy, financial literacy, environmental literacy. These and other essential life skills are unique, learned and used by each of us every day of our lives. Indeed, they are the common thread in our humanity, core to individuals and the communities they construct, surviving and thriving. Raising the bar on life skills education for all. This is the mission of Parenting 2.0. Visit www.parenting2pt0.org for more information.
And so we need to get the word out there. How do we do that? I'm not 100% certain, but every opportunity that I have, especially with a young person, I try to go through critical thinking skills with them, and I'll ask some questions. They don't know I'm like educating them at the moment, but I'll ask some questions. Well, if you do that, what could happen? Are you prepared for that? And then make them start looking at the consequences.
Yeah. Well, we have events like Universal Life Skills Day in October, right? That raises awareness. Those of us that are actively teaching life skills and are mentors in the world, we hope that the seeds that we're planting, and even in having the conversation and calling them universal life skills and explaining what that means, the skills that every human being on the planet learns unequivocally.
Right.
That somewhere, somehow, even this podcast, somewhere it's going to stick and going to grow. These are seeds being planted just to get the conversation going, just to get the awareness being built, right?
That's right.
And so anybody who's listening to this podcast, anybody who is a life coach or a budding life coach, or anyone who is a parent, or as we say in Parenting 2.0, of the parenting generation, whether or not you have children, children of your own. Oh, there was a bang outside my door. My dog's going nuts.
I heard the bang and I hear
it's okay. It's small town living. We have this capacity to understand very quickly and very clearly what the skills are. And every time we learn one, or we ramp up or improve our skill level, then that gives permission to anyone who's a witness to do the same thing.
Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right, Henry. And there's so many people in the world doing this now, and they're working on the United Nations has a program called Sustainable Development Goals.
I've not heard of that.
And yeah, they call them the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So there's people all over the world. So, in the Global Presence, we do humanitarian awards, and the person that we just nominated for the awards is he's working in the Sustainable Development Goals planning program with the United Nations, and his field is health in particular, and he goes all around the world helping people set up these health programs to serve people in their neighborhood, and also to educate people on how to have good health. So there's just amazing things being done in the world, and people just have to look for it, but it's there and you can connect with it. And to me, that's what's so valuable about social media, is being able to connect with these people so easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be able to share. That's a really important part of this whole picture, is communicating to other people.
That's exactly
it's really hard on YouTube. You're talking about alternative sources for news and so forth. The difficulty around that for me is that there's a lot of conspiracy theory going around. It's hard to know what's true anymore, right? But
that's exactly right. Really,
cultivation of your gut instinct, right, and your logic and your critical thinking, I think, is what's going to get us to the other side of chaos, and ultimately.
No, that's exactly right. I was just having a conversation with a friend this morning about the economy, and he sent me this thing about the economy and how it's going to be really awful. And I said to him, I just, that's not going to touch my life at all. I don't read things like that. I don't listen to things like that. I just live my life one day at a time and I make it work. And right now, everybody is complaining about, I don't have enough money, all my clients are gone, I don't have a job. I'm making more money than I have in the last 3 years combined.
Wow.
So, because I'm just not allowing that to touch me, it has no influence over my life whatsoever. And people have to stop listening to the news. Find your headlines, just look at headlines. And if you want to know about something, try to research it. If you want to know the truth about COVID, for as much as they know about it, go to medical sources and go to other doctors, and don't get it on YouTube from sources that you don't know who they are and you can't trust. Anybody can put on a pair of scrubs and say, I'm a doctor.
Exactly.
It doesn't make them a doctor, and there's people out there. And I'm looking at this one guy the other day, somebody sent me this on Messenger, they sent me a video, and I looked at it, and this guy's claiming to be a doctor, and he's got this big beer gut, and he doesn't speak English. I mean, he speaks like he grew up in the bayou, and I don't know, he speaks a lot of slang. I didn't mean to disparage people living in the bayou. I apologize for that. But he just was like speaking kind of I don't know, trash talk, in other words, and not saying anything worth listening to, and yet people were quoting him.
Yeah.
Like he's a doctor, and I think he was a total fraud. He just put on a pair of scrubs and said, I'm a doctor.
Well, there's a lot of that. There's certainly a lot of that. So as we're wrapping up here, I can't believe the time has gone by so fast. I could talk to you forever, and I hope you'll come back.
I'd love to.
We have so many other topics we could broach. But what are 3 takeaways that you want our listeners right now to carry with them from either this conversation or something we didn't get to move forward, to meet this moment in time and also this future that's coming?
Well, the first thing is, like, really take responsibility for your thoughts and what you allow in. And you can do that. It's just a matter of being aware of your thoughts and just looking at them and what's going through my head right now. And is that serving me well, as you asked? Is that serving me well or not? Don't watch mainstream news. Just don't do it. Let's shut it off. Turn off the TV. I stopped watching TV about 6 years ago, and I don't miss it. I do not miss it. My life has improved so much since I stopped watching TV. And I will not watch the mainstream news. They're all the same, whether it's Fox News, who leans to the right, or CNN, who leans to the left, or MSNBC, who's all the way to the left. It's like they're all radical, they're all crazy, they're all owned by corporations whose main thing is to get money out of your pocket. Right. So don't watch them. If you stop watching them, things will change.
And you'll help your stress levels too. My goodness.
Exactly. You will help your stress levels. So was that 1 or 2 takeaways? Let's count that as one takeaway.
That's one.
Takeaway. The other is, like, really be aware of your environment. Get out in nature more. Nourish your brain and your spirit. That is just so important. Look at the things in your life that control you and try to let them go. And the third takeaway would be, learn to forgive yourself and learn to forgive others, because forgiveness is so transformative. And I could tell you stories about forgiveness in my life, but when you forgive somebody, you don't even have to tell them that you're forgiving them for some slight or something that they've done to you. If you had an abuser or a parent who was an alcoholic or something, if you just forgive them in your own heart and your own mind, that will change your life in ways that you can't even imagine.
And you're forgiving them not necessarily for their sake, but for your own.
For your own sake, because when you truly forgive somebody, then all of that negativity that you were holding on to, you release from your mind and your heart, and it frees you up, and you are going to have, like, positive consequences in ways you can't even imagine.
Well, you wrote the book on the subject. Literally, Courage Under Siege, Hurt to Healing. And I'm going to have a link to that in the description, along with your other books as well.
That's great. So that's an anthology. There were 6 of us that contributed to that, and I just wrote the essay on forgiveness is transformative. So
fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning
Absolutely. That. I've got the links in the description. I've also linked to your Monetize Your Passion Academy, which we didn't get to talk about, but maybe that'll be a subject for the next one. Thank you so much for taking this time. It was a real pleasure, as always, to talk to you.
The pleasure was mine, Henry. Thank you so much. And anytime you need a fill-in, just call me.
You know it. All right. Well, take care.
I love to talk.
Yes.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Lost Traveler with Henry Cameron Allen. For more information, please visit www.henryallen.org. Thanks so much for tuning in, and let's all keep striving for a better world. Thank you.